Now, in your training, in your singing, it's important that you understand that vocal fold closure or vocal fold adduction happens from two different sources of energy. There are two primary systems or mechanisms in the body, okay, that as singers we command and control and manage, that are responsible for vocal fold closure. And they work together as a kind of a give and take relationship, these two elements. Those two elements are, one, vocal fold closure or vocal fold adduction that is brought on by the contraction of muscles, moving muscles. All right? Vocal twang, ah, me, and vocal quack, twang mode, quack mode. Those are vocal fold compression modes. Those are vocal modes, physical vocal modes that are characterized by compression. And when we train onsets like the quack and release onset, its specific purpose is to build that musculature required for vocal fold adduction or vocal fold closure. So, the first way that we as singers can engage good vocal fold closure is by working that intrinsic musculature that we're training in the program and that I talk a lot about. And that's important. You have to be able to do that. And squeezing the muscles or squeezing the twinger or twinging these small contractions, it's actually fairly intuitive. Most people pick up on it fairly quickly. The concept of vocal twang is fairly common and intuitive and easy to understand. So that seems to be more predominant in people's singing. The other system that's involved in vocal fold closure and vocal fold adduction is the respiratory system. The wind that's moving through the vocal tract, that's moving through the vocal folds. It also has a very important role to play, not only in providing the energy and the fuel, so to speak, that drives the singing voice, that kind of drives the singing voice as if it's wind blowing into a pinwheel. Similar. The respiratory system is our source of energy and fuel, so to speak, that runs the voice. But it also is super important in playing a role for vocal fold adduction. Now, in regards to respiratory vocal fold adduction, this happens through the physics of Bernoulli principles, Bernoulli physics. Now, go look that up or watch the lesson on Bernoulli physics and it'll explain exactly what it is. But I will attempt to explain it to you right now. Bernoulli physics, or the Bernoulli principle, is simply this. When the air from your respiratory system blows through the vocal folds, right through the glottis, and the glottis is the open space between your vocal folds. My left vocal fold, my right vocal fold, the space in between is the glottis, okay? It's not tissue, it's just open space. My glottis is open, my glottis is closed, all right? Now, when wind blows through the glottis, or the respiratory system, when you're singing, when it blows through the glottis, if you blow that wind through at a certain velocity, then Bernoulli physics, or the principle of Bernoulli physics, will take place. And when Bernoulli physics takes place, it creates a vacuum. Now that is to say, good respiration through the vocal folds, through the glottis, through the vocal cords, call them what you want, if it's done right, you'll create a vacuum in the glottis, and that vacuum pressure brings the vocal folds together. Now, I'll ask you a question. What sounds more efficient to you? Engaging vocal fold closure by squeezing a muscle, or engaging vocal fold closure passively by creating a vacuum in the glottis. Which system for vocal fold adduction sounds less fatiguing to you? Which one sounds like it's going to help you get less fatigued and less tired when you're singing for 2 or 3 hours in front of an audience? Squeezing the twinger, squeezing muscles to get vocal fold closure when you're singing and screaming high notes for 2 or 3 hours, or blowing wind through your glottis and having the vocal folds close passively with a vacuum by creating a vacuum in the glottal space. Which one seems more efficient? Which one seems the least fatiguing? Now, those of you out there that are smart, if I explain myself properly, you know what the answer is. Bernoulli physics. If you can get vocal fold closure passively without squeezing a muscle, by just creating a vacuum in the glottis, that's a hell of a lot more efficient and definitely a lot less fatiguing. Now, when I make that point, I'm not suggesting that twinging is bad or that musculature closure is something we don't want to do. You have to do that. It's important. We need a little bit of both, actually. And a good way of thinking about it is I like to say 20-80. 20% closure that comes from anchoring the glottis by squeezing the twinger, and if you're good and you've trained and you've got good respiration, 80% of your vocal fold closure coming from good respiration or Bernoulli physics through the glottis. Now, those are the two systems that you're going to command and control and need to manage. It's resource management. Another point that's important about understanding these two different ways that we get the vocal folds to adduct is that as an artist, closing the vocal folds or adducting the vocal folds with more or less musculature contractions or more or less wind or Bernoulli physics in the glottis influences the sound color. It gives you more color or more choices as an artist to sing. So this isn't only about just the mechanics of a good, solid, stable, supported singing voice. This lesson, really, the end game, is really about having options and more color and more choices as an artist when you start singing. Because a glottis or a singing note that has more compression in it, more muscle in it, has a certain sound to it. Let's do it. This is an example of me singing or making a note that has a fair amount of vocal fold compression in it. Now you can hear it's a sound color that wouldn't work for a love song or a ballad, but that's a sound color you could use in a rock song or a metal song. Yeah! 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 All right? And if I squeeze even further, I can go beyond to a certain threshold where it actually becomes our compressed overlay distortion technique, which is explained in another lesson. So squeezing the glottis can give me a little bit more of a brighter, twingy sound, and if I go really far with that configuration, it can engage overlay compressed distortion, which is one of the forms of distortion that we train in the program that you'll get to later. Now, if I take a similar note and I relax the musculature a little bit and I blow more wind, notice that the sound color will become a little bit warmer, a little bit, maybe it'll have less attack in the vibe, in the aesthetic. Listen. Yeah! Hey! See, that phonation has more air in it. I can actually hear it a little bit more. Now, the audience doesn't hear that air, but it does have a little bit more air in the sound. I'm blowing more respiration in that sound. I'll do it again as soon as the ambulance leaves. So let's try the same note with a little bit more respiration in the glottis. Hey! Hey! Yeah! Yeah! That sound, I'm telling you, believe me when I tell you, has a lot less squeeze in the glottis. I feel a lot less musculature in here, and I hear and feel a lot more wind in the sound. You may even be able to hear a little bit of that wind in the sample as well. And I'll do it again. Notice how it makes the sound color a little bit darker. It's a little bit darker when you rely on Bernoulli passive vocal fold closure versus squeezing the glottis. So in a sense, what I'm kind of setting up here is more respiration, Bernoulli fold closure, passive vocal fold closure, darker, warmer. More musculature squeeze, brighter, more aggressive. It's a real simple way of looking at it. Here's the more respiration, Bernoulli fold closure version. Hey! All right, try another one. Hey! All right, same note with more twang compression. Hey! All right, you hear that? Try another one. All right, this is an F. Better respiration, more vacuum in the glottis. A little more Bernoulli physics working for me. Hey! All right, this time, a little more squeeze on the twanger over here, a little more muscle squeeze. Hey! Hear the difference? So this is more than just about managing these two systems that are responsible for vocal fold closure, vocal fold adduction. When you get really good at it and you understand the two, it's a lot about having different colors to work with as a singer. The glottal compression, how the glottis is squeezing, closing, adducting, is a huge component in the overall sound color and style and things that you do that make you unique as an artist, not just as a training student, but as a singer.